We're back with Season 9, Episode 5. I've already forgotten. The Point of No Return. This is the episode in which... Sorry. This is the episode in which Twilight realizes the most horrific truth she's ever had to face about herself. She has been tardy in returning a book to the library. Now, this is truly a blow. I'm going to stop playing this up. I actually like how serious this episode is treated, despite being a simple low-tier thing. In fact, in my actual notes, what I wrote is, I love this show. I love that the big crisis of the episode is an overdue library book. And I mean that. That's not a joke. That's not like... As I've said many times as we've been covering this series over the past however many years it's been, 2 months, something like that, I really do enjoy the kind of down-to-earth, grounded storytelling this show has offered. It's also taught me a lot about certain aspects of writing, which I hope to continue to use myself going forwards, especially in the restaurant story that I really want to tell in the extant. I'm going to grab Braegon and I'm going to force her to write, not the restaurant story. She has to write a goblin story, but I'm going to make her write, even if I have to tickle her everywhere. All right, so at the beginning we see poor Muffin. Poor Muffin. And we also see poor Spike, who, of course, obviously, figurines are kind of expensive, and, I know a lot of people get really into figurines. I'm actually not one of those people, but I know plenty of people who get into tabletop, whether in the pen and paper D&D kind of thing, or in the wargaming Battletech / Warhammer kind of thing, who are really into figurines. So yeah, no, those are expensive, and those are kind of things. Anyways, I'm just saying, Braegon. There's also this wonderful little tidbit. Yeah, the G1 stars will get a laugh out of me. That she mentioned that she had an old report she did on using magic in everyday chores, which is another thing I tend to enjoy in fiction when they use, the fantastical for the mundane, which is something I've commented on a lot in this show. But then it's like, oh my god, what do we do? Then we see the flashback. This is actually quite cute. Did you... Yeah. Sorry, I did a lot of talking today. We had a 2-hour lore week discussing finances and legality. Anyways, I think that's all I talk about in lore week now. Anyways, so the flashback we see, you notice how they actually have like a little bit of a higher pitch for Twilight, so she sounds younger. And they also actually show some specific footage from the first episode to help emphasize it, just with a couple of strategic edits to add in the new scenes. That was actually pretty clever, the way they did that. And, of course, we actually see the book knocked aside. And I did double-check, and yeah, they actually did go boop, boop, boop to several of the books before finding the one she was looking for. And so, yeah, that actually is a shot from the original episode. They didn't actually cheat, unlike a certain episode of Futurama I could mention. Anyways, so then naturally she draws tons of attention to herself because she's terrified about being seen by teleporting all over the place and hiding in the bushes. And, of course, everyone sniffs books, right? What do books smell like? I don't have a book in range to grab to test that, so I'm not sure. Anyways. Point being, obviously you sniff books, why wouldn't you? This then leads to her... the animation is just phenomenal in this episode. This is a very high presentation quality episode. Very high quality. Even better than some of the stuff we've seen before. I'm not going to go down the list, as usual. I'm not going to bore you with it. It's just... Damn, there's some good quality animation in this episode. Holy crap. Also, very good dialogue. Did you notice that? One of the things I've noticed, especially lately, as I have been getting more and more into writing my own dialogue, as I've been doing with the LTTP theater that I'm going to be working on today, too, is there's a lot that goes into writing good dialogue. It's something I've talked about a lot, but I've gotten into it even more so lately. Which I bring up because there's a whole lot of usage of cadence, tone, and pattern with regards to the rhythm that they speak in this episode. It's really well done, and I imagine most people wouldn't even notice it. Either way, she then sees a book about Mooncurve's 7 theories on bending time. Curious that Twilight would be interested in that. But unfortunately, she's not pulling any books out of the library today, and everyone in the library is like, oh my god, that's so shocking that Twilight will... I love that she just has this rep. In fact, that's also part of a brick joke, but we'll get to that in a minute. So, no, they use the comic to hide and talk about it, which then leads to a yawn. Oh, hang on, yawn attack. God, I'm sorry. Now, I love the way they do this, because there's actually a second brick joke that I imagine most people didn't even notice here. The woman says, oh, yes, you have a late book. Well, I'm afraid you're going to be led to the grossly overdue book return office for ponies who should know better. Where is it? It's in the basement. Because of the shame. Remember that. I'm actually going to come back to that later. So they go into the horrible, horrible basement. And, they try to find her, and she's not there. Okay, well, she's out eating. So we go do a little bit of a quick run through, and we end up at the Tasty Treat restaurant. And this is where we mentioned that this episode has a lot of callbacks in it with regards to continuity. But the ones that I think count for the continuity counter are the Tasty Treat restaurant, Moon Dancer, and several of the people in Camelot, as well as several of the people at the old folks' home. That's 4. So we're going to go ahead and tack on 4 continuity counters for this one. Oh, the shame, Darth Medoro. At least the shame of the basement, obviously. If you're living in a basement of a library, excuse me, not a regular basement. If you're living in the basement of a library, we probably need to ask why. Okay, sure. I'll agree with that. We'll also count the footage from the first episode. I'll give you that one. Shame. Anyways, by the way, I love naan. I really wish I could have Indian food right now. God, I love what I could get in. Anyways, I'm joking anyways, Darth Medoro. I've lived in basements, plural. I've also lived in other people's houses for most of my life. The place the place I lived right before here, and this place are the only 2 places I've lived at, on my own ever. So it took me to my late 30s to figure that one out. Anywho, money. So, I love the fact that Spike so naturally takes to being a waiter without even meaning to. Because, of course, he would do that. Of course, he has a quill and notepad there, ready to go. And he would probably make a good waiter. And I don't mean a good waiter in the sense that as an insult. I mean that as a compliment. As with a secretary, which is something we've talked about a lot, even lately, waitressing or waitering is something that there's a really big gap between a good waiter and a bad waiter, right? And I think Spike would be a good one. I think he would do a good job of that, and he would, and it's just... We could talk about that. We could talk about financial stuff. Well, we've talked about enough financial stuff today. Let's just say that Spike would fit into that role perfectly, as he actually does. Then we find out that Moon Dancer, who of course actually knows not only who Dusty Pages is, but that she left. Remember, even the library person didn't even know who that person was. But she was forced to leave because she had a perfect record. But one pony didn't return a book, ruining it all. Are you okay, Twilight? And then it just cuts to Twilight, who's just sitting there shaking and sweating. Everything is so much worse than she already thought it was, as she is freaking out. I love the visual gags in this episode. There's so many. I'm not going to call them all out. There's a lot. Meanwhile, Spike, who is delivering the meal, yeah, like I said, this is a very well presented episode, says, as Twilight runs out, that's why you only order the spicy if you really mean it. That's obviously a joke. Actually, what he says, I wrote down, you only order spicy if you can take it. That's a joke, obviously, but actually that's true. Did you know that if you go to some Indian restaurants, they will actually double check with you like, okay, hang on, if you want it spicy, we're going to make it spicy. Not normal spice. It's going to be very burny spice. Are you sure? Are you sure you're sure? And they will check with you to make sure you actually mean it. As they should, because anyone who's had actually spicy Indian food can attest it is actually spicy. I am one of those people. I love actually spicy food. Yeah, Thai places too, absolutely. There's this one dish which is basically just baked meat strips. The thing it's baked in is essentially the seeds from a pepper. I forget which type of pepper it is. And if you don't know, most of the spice of most peppers is in the seeds. Anyways, that's actually one of the spiciest things I've had in my life. That was ridiculous. It was good, though. Ooh, it was good. Anyways. Thankfully, I can still have spice. I haven't gotten that old yet. I just have to have some carrots afterwards. Anyways. Or something sweet. Speaking of which, this is a completely off topic. Check it out. This is actually a belated Christmas gift from someone. It's this Mexican chocolate. They come in these little discs, right? I don't know if you can really see. Yeah, I'll just plug. They come in discs like this. And there's a bunch of... This is vanilla flavored. It's actually really good. I'm looking forward to trying all of them. Anyway. So you just have something like that. There you go. Really? Imperial Star Destroyer. Well, those people are wrong, and they must be stabbed to death. I've actually legitimately never heard that before. That's interesting. I wonder. Maybe it varies based on the pepper? I don't know. Either way, moving on. We're either both wrong, both right, or neither. Now, this is when I mentioned the dialogue, which is fantastic. This is also when we get to the interesting person who lives at where she used to live, who doesn't want any solicitors or sale ponies or anyone. He doesn't want anyone knocking his door. Leave me alone. I'm the one introvert in Ponyville, or sorry, in Canterlot. Leave me alone. And take all her mail. No free reading. No carolers. I think he mentioned people who sing, something like that. He has a bunch of signs up, and apparently people don't pay attention to it. Anyways, maybe he's living in the wrong place. But finally, they get the thing, they get the dialogue, and they're gonna go on their first montage to find all the silver spots, bunch of stuff. Then we get to the retirement home. Oh yeah, I've actually had salespeople knock on my doors. Not here. In fact, not in years. Not in a long years. Yeah, we saw Silverstream there too. But one of the things, and yes, I did catch that. But one of the things that happened is once upon a time, someone came to the door and was like, "Hi, I'd like to talk to you about..." And before, I don't actually know what they were selling, because before they finished the sentence, without saying anything, I closed the door right back on them. I have since been told that that's so normal that I shouldn't even feel bad about that. I admittedly do feel a little bit bad about that. Just a little. But that's pretty much my automatic reaction, because I've had to deal with that several times in my life. And you just don't let them talk. You don't let them just... It's like, yeah, okay. Bye. Same thing on the phone. Like, hello? Yes? Yeah, I don't have Comcast. Boop. Yeah, and just close it. I should have been funny about it, but I haven't had a salesperson at my door in a while. And if I do, then I'm going to shoot him in the face. Wait, that makes them a Nazi. Yeah, I'm okay with that. No, I'm joking. Either way, they go to the retirement home. How many of you been to a retirement home in your life? How many of you been to a lot of retirement homes in your life? The reason I bring this up, obviously, most of you probably know this about me because I say this fact semi-regularly. About half of my family comes from a medical background. As a consequence, I've actually been into and through a lot of retirement homes throughout my life. And of the many I've gone through, they all sucked. There are gradients of suck, of course. But even the really, really nice place we set up my great-great-grandfather in, that actually had, like, walkways and open areas and actually had, like, was close to someplace that was livable, was still worse than the place I'm living at now, for a bit of perspective. It was still dark and depressing and horrible. And I bring this up because I'm actually really against the concept of what we currently implement as retirement homes. But I think I'm a little bit more in favor of the concept, the conceptual idea of a retirement home. And I mention that because what do we see in this? And I actually wrote some notes here. Check this out. So we go in there. Spike even makes a mention that it looks really nice. And it does. Lots of open air. Lots of, trees, air, activities, right? We have, in fact, I wrote these down. What do we have here? We have woodworking, theater rehearsal, painting, some kind of stretching that I actually rewound 4 times to get what it was. It's like Genga Badi or something. Even the subtitles couldn't tell me what that was. Windsurfing, band practice. No bookshelves in sight. That's the joke. But screw the jokes. I want to talk about this for a second. As we've said so many times, Equestria is just better than real life. And this is a perfect example of that. This is, in my honest opinion, I was actually debating, like, there's a long-standing argument, and I don't want to presume position on it, so I'm not going to say one's right or the wrong, and you can make your own mind up on this, but it boils down to, should we take care of the elderly in the twilight years of their lives, or should we dismiss them and abandon them because they can no longer contribute to society? And that's the two sides of that argument. You can take whichever side on that you want, that's fine. I've heard a lot of arguments on both sides of that screen. As you might imagine, being someone who is so focused on individuals and people and personal stuff, I sit more on the side of I would like them to actually enjoy the final years of their life and actually have an enjoyable retirement in the classical sense of the word. And so I look at a place like this and I think I need to make that place real. Right? Just make that place actually exist, and a place where I can send my mom, for example. Or, you know, it's just people where they can just say, yeah, you know, we're good, and they can go and they can retire there and be happy and just, yes. Not mandatory, of course. That's totally another question there. Just wanted to comment on that. Like I said, we could discuss that. There is a lot of arguments on both sides of that particular argument, and people can make up whatever minds they want to on that one. It does look like this particular retirement facility is voluntary, specifically. And yeah, I recognize pretty much every elder pony there. This is one of the other continuity counters we've already given. I love the animation. I really do. There's actually one interesting thing. So they encounter her, and she says, I'm never going back. This then leads to, of course, the last activity they have, which is paintball. Now, they call it Food Fight Wars, but what they're doing, the outfits they have, the layout of the course, that's paintball. Which is amusing. They even make a specific point of mentioning that you shouldn't come onto the course without your gear, which is true. You should never go into a paintball track, even if you're not sure if they're live, without having your gear on, because... Anyways, paintball hits can hurt, by the way, for those of you not aware. But it's okay, it's Food Fight Wars. I also love the fact that she mentions that I'll be willing to never actually take out a book again, and everyone gasps. Because even here, this is the break joke I mentioned earlier, even here, everyone is like, oh my god! So then we get to the actual core topic of the episode. I'm not sure what to say about this. Fruit can still hurt. I mean, they have watermelons out there. This is... The funny thing is, MLP does this a lot whenever they have a message. They have the intended message, and I often think they have an unintended message as well. Now, the intended message is obvious. Perfection, the impossible pursuit. Ha ha ha. It's literally on the cover of the book. 100%ing is certainly its own thing. Anybody who knows me knows that I have... You're gonna die, Mr. Red. Of joy. What soda did you get? Many of you knows that I have a pretty strict definition of 100%, because I actually define it as 100% when it comes to games, for example. When, you know, do I 100%? There are very, very few games I've actually 100%ed because of how strict I am with my definition of that. In fact, most people I know in the speedrunning community call my definition of 90% more than what most other people call 100%ing. But it's exactly because of this concept. 100% means exactly that. If you get 7,000 questions right and one question wrong, you do not have 100%. That's the definition, right? Like, that's how that works. And I understand exactly what it's like to be bothered by that 0.001%, because it bugs me, too. A friend of mine, Gary, has said many times that one of the things he both trusts about and hates about me is that I am absolutely a perfectionist, and I am. It has taken me years to learn the lesson being posited in this episode, that that going for perfection is fine, but don't go too far. You have within limits, right? If it gets to the point where it's actually causing problems, yeah, exactly, bros. If it gets to the point where it's causing problems or causing issues, then that's probably a point at which you should pull back. There is such a thing as diminishing returns, after all. But what I find most interesting is that the unintended message is far more engaging here. And again, is a message that can go to adults and kids just as equally. Failure does not necessarily mean bad. There's an old quote, which I'm going to misquote here, that there's a difference between a mistake and an error, right? The mistake is, oh, you screwed up, but the error is you didn't try to correct it, right? Or to quote this another way, the difference between a master and you is that the master has failed a lot more than you have. It's another quote I like about that. And so I do like that unintended message that goes throughout this episode, that as she stumbles and as she makes, she goes through problems, she actually learns from them and grows and keeps going. And you'll notice that Twilight, this is a kind of undercurrent thing, but it's brilliantly written in its own way, because Twilight shifts her perspective more and more, arguably in a direction she should. At first, it's like, oh my god, my perfect record. Oh my god, the fines. Oh my god, my friend, is she okay? oh my god, she lost her perfect job and it's because of me. And like that perspective just changes bit by bit as she goes throughout the episode, because even as she is failing consistently, she is learning from it at each step and moving forwards. Now, there's also such a thing as learning from a failure in the other direction. Sometimes you fail at something and you should put it down. That is also a lesson that people need to learn. That's not covered by this episode. I'm just mentioning it for the sake of completion. Yeah, no, that tracks, Ect. Because you learned the bosses that you lost a bunch, right? I mean, that makes perfect sense to me as a side-scrolling platformer person. I can tell you more about the final boss fight of Metroid Dread than the ones that I actually smashed into the ground. For those of you, I'm avoiding spoilers, but for those of you not aware, the last boss I died on a lot in Metroid Dread. I can tell you the exact ways to pattern his combos right now in my head, because I died a lot to him. Beat him, 100% of that game. He had way too much HP. I do agree with that. It's one of the negatives I gave the game. Anyways, so it's a cool message. And then, of course, there's one other thing. Now, I asked you to remember the basement of shame. You remember that? The reason I asked you to remember that is because there's a common concept, and I've actually seen real-life libraries do this, but usually this is done by, like, teachers or parents or whatever. And one of the things they try to talk up how horrible something will be in order to prevent you from doing it, even though they're effectively lying. We've actually seen this on MLP with the, oh god, what episode was that? It was the Spitfire was the one who was doing it. Spitfire at the Wonderbolts, and she was talking to one of the young guys and said, "You'll live in a zoo. You'll be terrible. You'll be dead and horrible." You remember that? God, what was that about? Anyways, the point being, MLP has used that exact same concept. A lot of fiction does this. A lot of real life does this. Washouts. That was it. The wash. You'll be drinking through a straw. That was it. That was it. That was it. And that is a very common technique, and it almost never works. I talked about that in that episode. But the funny thing is there's a subtler way to do that, because the fees cap out at a month. Again, I've actually seen libraries do that. They don't publicly announce this. They don't share this. They just say fees accrue every day that they're late, and that's all they'll tell you. And it's true, but they usually do cap out at a month. Because, duh, right? First of all, there's actually legal reasons for that. But second of all, there's reasonability reasons. If it's going to be late, it's going to be late. But they do want to discourage people from not being late. They do want people to bring the books back in. So they go with this whole basement of shame approach where you have to go down there into the cold. And again, I've actually seen libraries do this. There's a specific library I'm thinking of in my head right now, where you had to go down into the basement level, into this other side area, which was just stark concrete walls, and it was all dark and horrible, just to be able to turn in that thing, because they want to discourage people from doing it. They want there to be that public shaming kind of aspect to it, so that ponies will be less likely to, to not return books. That's the whole point of that. Whether it works or not, I have no idea. I just wanted to comment on it because it's funny that they do that. Anyways, and then we end on a wah-wah, so let's go ahead and move the wah-wah counter forward. It's actually a lot smaller than I thought it would be. 65 episodes so far. Out of like 800? No, that's way overbilling it. There's only 700 Simpsons episodes. I have no idea how many episodes there are. There's 20... I can do that in my math in my head. About 200. About 200 episodes. So... I know, right, Lord Hermit? That's your job. So your book is late. Anyways, and yeah, it was only 26 bits because, again, monthly cap. This episode was written by G.M. Barrow. Now, G.M. Barrow has written a weird conglomerate of episodes. They put out, I'm not sure if it's a guy or a girl, they have put out the one where Pinkie Pie knows, that was an orange. Fluttershy leans in, that was a blue. Daring Done, that was a purple. Granny's Gone Wild, which is a red. And The End in Friend, which was a yellow. That's across Season 5 to Season 9. I knew it, Bragwin. The presentation on this episode is phenomenal. Let's just get that out of the way. Really good presentation. It's I hate to keep pointing that out, but I feel like they continue to get better. I really do. I think because of the presentation alone, orange is the floor for this one, in my opinion. I can't imagine going below that. You know, I love how dismissive that sounds, Kay. Oh, is this the thing with the aliens? No, this isn't purple. I don't think this qualifies as purple. It is a very good, very fun episode. But I don't think this qualifies that high. I'm torn between red or orange, really. Well, no, it's true though, isn't it, Kay? Like I remember when people used to speak so dismissively about Star Trek. Nowadays, it's a lot more commonly popular and acceptable. But I do remember when video games and Star Trek and all those normal things nowadays, we used to say, "Oh, so this is where you kids are talking about video games, right?" And I do still occasionally have to ban someone on YouTube for making a comment that's a substantially more harsh comment than the one you just made on YouTube. So, you know, hi, Pet Talks. Like, much, 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 much worse than anything you're saying. Yeah, that's cool. Sorry, not you guys. I'm just getting a notification. Like, I don't want Dominoes, thank you. Although, I could have Dominoes. I could have it right now. It could be mine. Actually, it would probably take about an hour to get here. What about the guy who punches buildings, though, okay? That's another one, though. Comic books and, of course, manga. I remember when both of those were ostracized. It's always weird to be old enough to recognize things drifting in and out of acceptable categories. You ever notice that? Anybody's been old enough, long enough to notice this happening over time? Oh my god, Jesse Ward. I think I'm going to make it red. Sorry, I have been debating. I think this is an exceptionally well-done episode with a good moral, with excellent writing. I know most people don't care about the writing, the dialogue writing like I do, but I have to praise it for that. I think that's going to push it up to red. I think this is a very good episode. Whoops. Let's pull up my little pony. Next episode we're covering is Common Ground, which, as usual, I'm not reading any of these, so I have no idea what Common Ground's about, so I will see you all in about 25 minutes.